I think you all know Mohammed well. He's our Regional Vice President for Africa and the Middle East. So just want to give you an update of performance for aviation in the Middle East for 2020, which hasn't been the best year for aviation. So Mohammed, I'll just pass over to you. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. I'll go over a few slides just to put things in the right context, and then we open the floor for questions and answer. Just a reminder. Okay. Do you see my screen?
Yes, we do.
All right. Is it moving now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Not too long ago, April 2019, this was the picture of how it was in the Middle East. A real center of connectivity within the Middle East and across the world. 1,060 city pairs were being connected, by airline companies across the Middle East and across the world. A true amazing picture that represents the great importance of aviation for the Middle East, for the countries of the Middle East, and for what the Middle East played in terms of connecting west to east, east to west. Now, if we look into April 2020, 1 year later, we're down to 100 city pairs, unfortunately. And that goes to show the huge impact that COVID-19 and all the related government policies and procedures have done to the sector, and to be, from a real hub of connectivity into a mere 100 city pair is really a worrisome picture, not only for the aviation sector, but for everybody who lives and works in the Middle East and whose livelihood depends on connectivity and depends on the aviation sector. If we translate that into numbers and we compare the growth that was successfully achieved by the Middle Eastern countries across the region between 2014 and 2019, and we can see huge double-digit increments, year on year. And some of the examples were shown here on the screen. For instance, UAE, 22% in 2019 growth over 2014. Saudi Arabia, 53%. Qatar, 28%. Kuwait, 49%. Oman, 121%. This is the achievement that, that the countries in the Middle East really successfully attained over, a short period of years from 2014 to 2019. And we were on a continuous growth trend. However, we got hit with COVID-19. What you see now on the screen is the red bars, which represents 2020, which was the lowest point of air traffic volume and air traffic movements in the region, and we can see the huge impact, the negative 89% for UAE, 96% for Saudi Arabia, 64% for Qatar, and so on and so forth. This is really, the impact in terms of percentage, in terms of numbers, and the countries, in the Middle East as a result of the various government policies in their effort of fighting COVID-19. Looking at the picture from a different perspective, and if we look back into 2017, 18, 19, and we compare the passenger traffic year on year, percentage of change, and the revenues of the airline companies year on year, percentage of change, the blue bar shows the passenger traffic increase year on year. So 2017 compared to 2016, we had 6.8%, healthy 6.8% increase, 5% increase in the revenues. 2018, 5%, another 5% increase, and so on. Until 2020, the forecast is minus 73% for the passenger traffic, and minus 59% for the revenues year on year for the airline companies. The forecast for 2021 is not that much better, but it is better than 2020. However, it's still in the minus. Passenger revenues in 2021 will be 43% better than 2020, but it will remain negative in the territory and revenues as well. Unfortunately, because of the delays in the recovery and because of the delays in the anticipated recoveries that we had anticipated it would have taken place in the second half of 2020 going into 2021, but that has not happened, and therefore our forecast for 2021 show still better than 2020 performance, however still in the negative. So the total loss for 2020 for the Middle East, $7.1 billion. The total expected total loss for 2021 will be $0.3 billion. Still a loss, better than 2020, but still a loss. That translates to 68.5 cents US dollars per passengers. So for every passengers that the Middle Eastern carriers carry in the year, they will be losing $68 per passenger. That's how huge and how colossal, the region has been hit in terms of aviation, in terms of the financial and economic impact. Now, when we compare the region to the other regions around the world in terms of the employment supported by air transport, direct employment, there's 1.8 million jobs in the Middle East at risk of being eliminated. And we have seen and we have all heard, the tens of thousands of jobs that have been eliminated over the last few months and more to come. And it all depends on the speed by which the sector will recover. $115 billion worth of GDP supported by the air transport industry is at risk. $115 billion, ladies and gentlemen, $115 billion cannot be substituted by any other industry other than air travel and tourism. That is at risk right now for countries across the Middle East. Where do we go from here? The plan is very clear now. Documents have been published. Plans and roadmaps have been put out in public after it has been jointly worked on by all the global and international organizations, ICAO, IATA, ACI, WHO, you name it. They have put their resources and their experts together, and they've come up, with all the needed documents and the needed recommendations for governments to adapt in sectors. Reopening borders safely is a must, is no longer an alternative.
Cheers,
It really has to happen, and it really has to happen quickly. But it really has to happen across the region in a harmonized way and a harmonized manner, whereby countries really cannot afford to adapt their own unilateral measures, but they really have to adapt internationally accepted measures across all the countries in the Middle East to make sure that no more confusions and no more hurdles standing in the way of the restart and the recovery. And of course, countries in the Middle East, they really have to start working together to support the delivery of COVID-19 vaccines, not only because of the needs of the Middle Eastern countries, peoples and populations, but also to act as a shipping hub between East and West and West and East to safely and securely help transport the vaccine around the world. There are a lot of aspects that need to be taken care of, and the airline ecosystem is a complex ecosystem. It is built on safety and security. Safety and security will continue to be the backbone of the industry, and in order to do that, many aspects of the ecosystems will have to be assessed, will have to be risk mitigated, and will have to be carefully planned, to restart the industries. ICAO, IATA, ACIs, everybody who's related have been issuing a lot of documentations, a lot of manuals, a lot of recommendations for countries, airports, airlines, maintenance companies, airport companies, ground handling companies, to make sure that they follow the recommended approaches to safely and securely recover the industry. We have been advocating and strongly advocating specifically lately that quarantine will not work. Countries cannot continue to rely on closing their borders or opening their borders but requiring quarantines. Quarantines doesn't work. Statistics and studies have showed that. We are advocating that testing, systematic testing, is the safe alternative to reopen borders and to eliminate the quarantine requirements. Testing that is scalable, affordable, accurate, and fast in delivering the results is the way forward. And we're working very hard, to make sure that countries will accept this and will adapt this in a harmonized way, in accordance with ICAO's CART 1 and CART 2 guidance, and of course ICAO's manual and testing and cross-border risk management measures, which has been published last week or early this week, that shows and recommends to countries what's the best approach really to open borders, adapt testing instead of quarantines, and make sure that they adapt a risk-based management approach to ensure against importation or exportation of COVID cases. If we take an example, and we wanted to show one example, but one of many, this is not the only one, the Emirate of Dubai. Dubai was one of the first Emirates or the first, parts in the region where they aggressively, put together collections of policies, guidelines, rules and regulations to fight the epidemic, but also to open up their skies, open up their borders, and allow free movements of passengers and goods. And they have successfully done so and opened up and removed all restrictions, including quarantines. And we wanted to share with you this life examples based on live scientific data provided by WHO and by the government agencies in Dubai, and see what really happens when countries adapt proper scientifically based measures to fight the virus, but also a balanced approach to open up the sector and allow free movement. This is what really happened. The blue line shows the increase and the growth in the traffic and the number of passengers since April to October. The red line, of course, compares 2019, but compare the blue line to the bottom right-hand side of your screen, where you see the number of COVID cases in Dubai and how it continuously, continued to be going down and down. This proves beyond any doubt that, opening borders and allowing air travel to resume does not add to the number of cases. Most studies that have been done in Italy, in Canada, in China, and everywhere show that most reported cases in countries who experience now the second wave, as they call it, are actually local cases and not imported cases. We wanted to share this example with you, and there are plenty of other examples in the Middle East that show that opening skies, adapting proper measures, internationally accepted and recommended measures, really doesn't add to the reported number of cases in that particular nation or in that particular society. We should have more and more of this. All the countries in the Middle East should really, go along the same way in order to achieve fast recovery of the sector. Amongst all the efforts that IATA have been working on is one particular effort that we, issued a press release about it, I think a couple of days ago, is the IATA Travel Pass. What is the IATA Travel Pass? It is IATA's a global and industry solution. It's an industry solution based on industry standards of collecting, managing, and exchanging information in a safe and secure manner without endangering personal privacy or personal data. and without collecting personal data in a database or a data center that could, provide or could pose a risk, for exposure of that data. This particular standard and this particular platform allows passengers to check what is the health requirements and the test requirements for the country the person wants to travel to. That particular platform also allows the passenger to check which lab and testing labs and vaccination centers are actually approved and verified and accepted by the country a passenger wants to travel to. That particular solution also allows the passengers to get tested but get their own results digitally on their own smart device in a safe and secure manner, thereby allowing the passengers to augment that test results with their digital identity and then exchange it with airports, airport officials, with airlines, with border controls, with health agencies of the country that they want to travel to. This will eliminate the need for paper, will eliminate the need and the confusion faced by many passengers of what are the requirements, what are the changing requirements all the times, what labs are accepted, by what country, how do I get the test results, would that test results be accepted of the country that I'm traveling to, and so on and so forth. This application is in final phase of its development now. It will be piloted in the month of December and early January with many airlines and airports around the world, including in the Middle East, and it will be publicly available in the first quarter of 2021. This is a game changer, ladies and gentlemen. This will allow smooth transmission of data between all the parties and allow smooth journey while ensuring that valid test certificates, digital certificates, are actually linked to digital identity of the traveler and provided to authorities to allow free movements of people. The Middle East, as we said, carriers will play a key role in delivering, the COVID-19 vaccine, and governments, airlines, airports, everybody really needs to work collectively, to make sure that they are ready, to play a key role in the safe and secure transportation of the vaccine to the Middle East countries and to other countries around the world. Last but not least, I want to also leave you with this. This really should not disappear from our mind. This is what the value of air transport and tourism in MENA means. $213 billion support and contribution to the collective GDP of the regions, 3.4 million jobs. These numbers speak for themselves. We should all continue to collect our efforts and work together and work very quickly to protect, the economies of the Middle East and protect the livelihoods and the jobs of millions of people and millions of families in the Middle East. Thank you very much. I hope I didn't take much of your time, but we can open it up now for questions.
Thanks very much, Mahmoud. If anybody's got a question, if they could either type it in the chat box or raise your hand. So a few people have raised their hands. So we'll start with Ruba Obaid. Please, your question, Mohammed.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, Ruba.
So my question is, I wanted to ask how this crisis impacts Saudi Arabia specifically, and whether you think Europe needs to be more flexible with passengers traveling from the GCC to its major hubs.
I'm really sorry, but if you don't mind repeating the question, the voice was not clear a little bit.
Okay. Well, I asked you about how did the crisis COVID-19 impacted Saudi Arabia specifically, and whether you think Europe needs to be more flexible with passengers traveling from the GCC to its major hubs.
Please, if you're not speaking, could you mute? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I mean, we will issue specific numbers for each particular country, but Saudi Arabia was impacted just like the rest of the Middle Eastern countries. The numbers were down in terms of we've seen on the screen. The number of how much the traffic was impacted in Saudi Arabia, 96% compared to 2019. That's a little bit of the cargo flights, a little bit of the repatriation flights, and some of the domestic flights since they started flying domestically back in May. However, Saudi Arabia, just like the rest of the countries in the Middle East, was impacted a lot because of its large networks, because of the large carriers that are operating, not only the Saudis carriers only, but Saudi Arabia's, they have about 94 international carriers. They fly in and out of the country as well, and all those were stopped. So the impact was major across the board for all the Middle Eastern countries.
Thank you, Mohammed. We'll move to Richard now. Richard,
Yes, hello. Richard here.
Hi, Richard.
Can you hear me? Can you see me? When you say that you expect revenues and RPKs to improve in 2021, where do you see this happening? Long-haul carriers or Middle East carriers are very much dependent on long-haul traffic. This is expected to recover only in 2024. So where is the recovery coming from in the next year?
Very good question. Thank you very much, Richard, for that. It's a recovery, but it's still a humble recovery. They were still going to lose about $3.3 billion in 2021. The recovery will be based on domestic traffic and regional traffic, and some of the travel bubbles that countries have managed to get bilateral agreements between Middle Eastern countries and other international countries. Some of those safe travel bubbles between some of the Middle Eastern countries and international countries in other continents will also contribute to that. But mainly the revenue will come from cargo flights, from domestic flights, and from regional flights.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Richard. Dania, over to you, please.
Hi, this is Dania Saadi from Platts. Just following on the previous question, with having like major hubs in the Gulf region, which depend on long-haul flights, what's going to happen to these hubs and their fleets of A380 and 777, which are used for long-haul flights?
Well, we cannot speak on behalf of what each particular airline's commercial and operational strategy will be. I think all those strategies will be adapted based on the speed of the recovery, based on the availability of the vaccine, and based on the speed of distributing the vaccine in 2021. But we have also heard from major carriers in the Middle East who operate these large aircraft, you mentioned the 380s, that they are putting those aircrafts on hold for now because of the demand and because of the lack of number of passengers. And this is why we continue to say passengers want to fly. Surveys that we have done say that 85% of the surveyed people say they want to travel. They trust air travel. What's stopping them is the quarantine requirements. What's stopping them are these harsh restrictions that would make traveling extremely harsh and extremely hard. And that's why we're calling for countries, not only in the Middle East, but across the board, across the globe, is to please eliminate quarantine, implement systematic testing that is scalable, fast, accurate, and cost-effective, and allow people to travel. And I am certain that if countries adapt harmonized measures, work together collectively, and implement the procedures that have been advocated and have been recommended by ICAO and by CAPSCA and by WHO and by IATA, the speed by which these fleets, regardless of what they are and where they are, will be put back in service.
Thank you, Mohammed. Any other questions from anybody else? Richard, do you have another question, or your hand was up from before?
No, I have a question.
Okay.
Camera on, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do you expect the COVID vaccines to be processed? Will, for example, Dubai Al Maktoum become the center of these, or is it Doha?
Well, I mean, we will need all the centers in the Middle East really to be able to transport huge amount of vaccines, not only into the Middle East, but also as into the Middle East as distributing hubs to the rest of the world. One center will not be enough. We're talking about vaccinating 8 billion people around the world. So we will need all the centers, and we will need all the capacities. Each individual government and each individual country needs to prepare its own capacity first to take care of its own people, but then to take advantage of their capability and their extra capacity to play a major role really in becoming a proper, safe, secure distribution hub. And we see a lot of opportunities for the Middle Eastern countries and Middle Eastern airlines and transportation hubs to play a key role in the vaccine safe and secure distribution around the world.
Richard, can you elaborate a bit more what is going on now between IATA and the other players into this topic, together with the airports, together with the airlines? Are you really talking right now with all airlines to move all their A380s back into service because they have temperature-controlled cargo belly holes?
Well, first of all, we're working with FAA, and we're working with ICAO to make sure that proper guidelines and proper procedures are actually adapted throughout the world to help the transportation of the vaccine. Last week, we issued our manual and the safe and secure transportation of the vaccine, and there was a great reception throughout the world. For that manual, we will continue to update that manuals as more and more information becomes available by working with all the related other international organizations. And I think we had forecasted 2 months ago that the world will need thousands and thousands and thousands of 747s cargo aircrafts to be able to transport the vaccines safely and securely around the world. We know that there are various temperature requirements based on the origin of the vaccine. Some require -70, some requires -80 degrees, and so on and so forth. But these requirements don't only apply to the phase of the flight itself. It applies to the entire supply chain, from the origin of the vaccine all the way to the person who's going to be vaccinated. And those guidelines really have to be put in place by governments, by regulators, by everybody, to make sure that the vaccine is safely and securely delivered to the people around the world.
Mm-hmm. And will the United Nations play a role in helping airlines financially to distribute vaccines, or is this up to the airlines themselves?
Well, we hope that United Nations, we hope that governments, we hope that everybody, anybody who could help the airlines, please come forward and help the airlines. We've seen the colossal losses airlines have gone through, but people and governments and regulators and international agencies have to realize that keeping airlines alive and keeping airlines capable to effectively and successfully play this role will be the game changer. Without airlines' capability to deliver this vaccine, the mere fact of having the vaccine is not going to be enough.
Thank you. No more questions from me.
Yes, we've got to make sure that airlines companies stay capable, stay technically capable, and will play this role. Otherwise, it will take decades to distribute this vaccine around the world.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dania, I see your hand is still up. I don't know if that's from before or you have another question.
No, that was from before. Thank you.
That was from before. I think that's all the questions we have. Any final questions from anybody before we wrap up? No?
Okay.
No? Well, thank you very much for joining, and we'll be distributing the presentation very shortly.